Welcome back to this tutorial video about using Python package for Yahoo Fantasy Sports API. If you haven't watched my previous video already, I suggest you watch it first before going through this video, as it will show you the steps to set up your development environment. You can find the link to that in the video description below. There's also a link to the GitHub source code if you want to download the sample code. Before we proceed, please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel. Alright, so from the last video, we left off with the script to display the list of players in our team. As a refresher, let me run that script again by calling the Python script and typing py fantasy tutorial, which is the name of the script. As you can see, this script displays my roster for the current week. Please note that my authentication token is already cached, so I don't have to log in to Yahoo again. Otherwise, running this script for the first time will ask for my Yahoo credentials as a one-time validation. Before anything else, let us quickly go through the code that we have written so far. I'll open up Visual Studio Code by typing code and then the name of the script. So from this script that we've written in the last video, you can see that in the first two lines, I have imported the Python packages for the Yahoo OAuth and the Yahoo Fantasy API. Next, I connect to the Yahoo API using the OpenOAuth protocol and passing the OAuth2 JSON file, which contains all the parameters for the authentication. Next, I retrieve the game object and pass in the fantasy sports type, which is NVA. Then I get the league IDs that I have joined and print it on screen. So if you have multiple leagues that you have joined, you will want to grab the league ID of the league that you want to access. In this case, this is the league ID for me. So once I have that, I use it to get the league object, and then once I have the league object, I get the team key. So team key is a unique identifier for your team within that league, and then I grab the team object, or I retrieve the team object using that team key. Lastly, I get the team roster and print it on screen. So as you can see here, the roster that I printed doesn't look nice. So what I'll do before we perform the add and drop operation, I'm going to format the display of the current roster so it's more readable on the screen. So first, I'm going to comment out this print roster line. And then I'm going to print a title to indicate that whatever is displayed below or printed below is my team. Next, I'm going to loop through the roster and print each player by typing for r in roster and then colon and then press enter and then print r. Alright, let's see how this looks like. Okay, let's clear the screen first and then run the code again. Here you go. As you can see, each player is being printed on a separate line, which looks much nicer, much readable, right? Okay, so you can see that my roster has Stephen Curry, Patrick Beverley, Isaiah Thomas, Jason Tatum, and so on. So if you want to validate that this is your correct roster, of course you can go to your Yahoo Fantasy web app and confirm that okay, this is the same roster that's being printed by my Python script. Alright, so in this screen we have several information about the players. So there's the player ID, the name, status, and different other information. So but the most important thing that you need, or the most important field that you need when you're going to add and drop a player, is their player ID. So you want to make note of the player ID that you want to add and drop. In this example, what we're going to do is we're going to add and drop 2 players. So I'm going to add and drop the last 2 player in my roster. So I'm going to drop Lou Williams and replace him with another player in the free agency, and also drop KCP and replace him with another player. So we need to find out who are the available players in the free agency. So how do we do that? So let's go back to the code. So let's create an FA variable, and then let's call the league object and execute the function called free agents. Alright. Then as a parameter, we need to pass the position of the player. So passing the position of the player, so in my case I'm gonna specify PG, which corresponds to point guard. So when you pass the position of the player, this will filter only the free agents that have this position, which is point guard. Next, we print out the list of the free agents. So first, let us print the title so we know that below is the list of the free agents. And then we'll also loop through each of the free agents. So say for P in FA, colon, and then press enter, and then print P. Okay, let's see how this code looks like. One more time. Save the code. I'll clear the screen and run the code again. As you can see, there's several lists of free agents that are being listed in the screen, and what you want to note down, or when you take note of, if you're new to fantasy sports, is the status. So you don't want to add players that have injured or out status. So in this example, I'm going to look for a free agent that doesn't have injured or out status. So we'll take Seth Curry, and we'll get Marcus Smart. Okay, so we're gonna add them both and drop Lou Williams, and KCP. So as I said, you need to take note of their player ID. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take the player ID information of those players and paste it, let's say, in Notepad. Okay. Alright, so we're gonna grab Lou Williams player ID, and we're also gonna grab KCP's player ID. Next, we're gonna also copy Seth Curry's player ID. And copy Marcus Smart's player ID. So I'm gonna just put them together, you know, for the set of players that we're gonna add and drop. So we're gonna drop Lou Williams and then add Seth Curry, and drop KCP and add Marcus Smart. So in NBA Fantasy, there are two ways that you can do add and drop. So first, you can individually, or you can call a function that adds a player and call a separate function that drops a player. So you can call them separately, or you can call a single function which add and drops a player at the same time. Okay, so let's see that in action. So first, I'm gonna put in a comment what to indicate which player I'm going to drop. So first, let's drop Lou Williams. So let's say drop Lou Williams. So to drop a player, you need to invoke the team object and then call the function drop player, and then pass in the player ID of the player that you want to drop. So in our case, I'm gonna get Lou Williams player ID and pass it as a parameter. Next, we want to add Seth Curry. So to add a player, you call the function add player, then pass in the player ID of the player that you want to add. Okay, so as I said, you also have the option to add and drop a player simultaneously. So we're just gonna put in a comment here and say add Marcus Smart and drop KCP. So to do that, you invoke the team object and call the function add and drop players. Okay, so the first parameter should be the player ID of the player that you want to add. So I'm gonna just get Marcus Smart's player ID and pass it as a first parameter, and then specify a comma to indicate the second parameter and get KCP's player ID, which is the player that we want to drop. Okay, let's save the code. So before we run this code, let us print the new roster in the screen. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna copy this several line of codes here and print the new roster of my team. So I'm just gonna rename that variable to new roster, then change the label to new roster, and then change this variable as well to new roster. Okay, so what I'll do as well is I'm gonna comment out the line that prints the free agents so that we can compare the previous roster with the new roster, and so that our screen won't be very busy and convoluted. Alright, so I'll save this code and then I'm going to run it. Gonna clear the screen again. And run the code. PY Fantasy tutorial. Here we go. Alright, so this was my previous roster, which had Lou Williams and KCP, and then after I run the add and drop operations, you will now see that I have Seth Curry and Marcus Smart in place of Lou Williams and KCP. So if I refresh my Yahoo Fantasy web app, you'll see that I now have Seth Curry and Marcus Smart in my team. So this concludes the video on how to add and drop players using the Yahoo Fantasy API. Thank you for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe to my channel. In the next videos, I'll be showing how to grab or retrieve the player stats and how you can automate the add and drop, and also how you can improve the code by using config.json file for adding and dropping players, plus so much more. Hope you like this video. Bye for now and have a great day. Thanks again.